Alright, we are live. Welcome, guys, to this Wednesday evening to, another webinar with, I'm very privileged today to have Osman Sabir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
It's alright, who is a confidence and, you say confidence and well-being?
Yeah, that's right.
Beautiful. So Osman's kindly given up some of his Wednesday evening to share some practical tips on dealing with anxiety, dealing with stress, dealing with depression, dealing with all those nasty bits and pieces that all of us have faced, or a lot of us have faced at one point. Oh, it's just replaying my YouTube, isn't it? Okay. Got echoing. So yeah, guys, we're gonna fill this hour with a lot of juicy information. Hopefully, give you guys some practical stuff to take away. I'm just gonna be picking Osman's brains. He's got some stuff prepared already, I know, but I don't know too much about it really. So it's gonna be quite free flowing, and who knows what's coming. So yeah, if you have any questions, you've got the chat thing to the right. Those of you in the Google Hangout. Those of you who didn't make the Google Hangout, it's all right. If you're watching via YouTube, Osman and I will be checking the YouTube channel periodically to see if there's any comments there. So do leave comments and questions, and then what we'll probably do is deal with them at the end. Maybe in, during the webinar, but probably at the end, and then you guys can voice your questions. So without further ado, I'm going to stop talking and hang over to Osman. Hand over, but we're on Google Hangouts. So, tell me, can you just tell myself and the guys listening a little bit about yourself, just why you're here? What got you, really briefly, to here?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it, and I'm actually stupidly excited to be here. So, hello. So, yeah, it's good stuff. So, what got me here? I'd probably go back and start off sort of looking back about 3 or 4 years, I think, 3 or 4 years ago. So I'll spare you guys the details, but basically I had a bit of a mental breakdown, or quite a big mental breakdown, about 4 or 5 years ago now. And I remember waking up one day and just thinking I'm too scared to get out of bed because I don't know what I'm going to do to myself, and that wasn't a great place to be. It was sort of the culmination of a lot of stuff that had happened over the previous few years. So I managed to get myself into A&E, saw a doctor. He diagnosed me as having severe anxiety and obsessive compulsive disorder, and that's kind of what was leading to my depression. So I remember walking out of the hospital and just looking up, bright blue sky, thinking beautiful day, and I'm kind of sitting here in hospital, not really where you want to be. So I just remember telling myself at that point in time, you know what, it's not going to be easy, but I'm going to make sure this doesn't rule me anymore, because over the last few years my life had been dictated. I felt like it had been dictated by what was going on around me and what was going on in my head, the circumstances. When you kind of feel like you're just a bit of a victim of the circumstances. So I kind of went on a massive mission, a really big mission to kind of drag myself back. So I got a lot of therapy, counseling, cognitive behavioral therapy, did loads of reading about how to deal with depression, OCD, made a lot of mistakes along the way as well, but with the right support, I managed to get myself to a point where actually I'm kind of the happiest I've ever been now. The reason I got into coaching is because when I started getting coaching a couple of years ago, I was pretty skeptical about it, because if people don't know about, when you don't know about coaching, when you don't know about something, your natural inclination is to be pretty skeptical about it, right?
Who are these phonies?
Who are these phonies? Absolutely. Why am I going to give $3 grand some guy to tell me that I should be feeling better. Do you know what I mean? So, but you know what? It turned my life around. It absolutely turned. This guy absolutely helped me turn my life around. Great guy. And at that point, you know, when I finished it was a 6-month program. When I finished it, I thought, you know what? This is what I have to do. This is me. You know, I've kind of found my calling. It's just, you know, it's just something that felt like it resonated with me. So I then went and did a coaching qualification, started working with clients, and for some reason, I'm not quite sure why, I didn't set out to do this, but I kind of ended up attracting a lot of clients that are dealing with sort of stress, anxiety, tension, that type of thing. And so I worked even harder on how I could develop a formula and a technique to kind of help them deal with those issues and actually get from a place where, you know what, life just, not necessarily, you know, varying levels of sort of anxiety and depression, but where life feels a bit crap to a point where, you know what, I'm actually enjoying things. I feel like I've got a grip on my mind. And the reason I'm here is because I never believed that you could actually control your mind to work for you. You know, I always used to believe that your mind is kind of its own. It's almost like in its own world. And now that I know it's possible, now that I've shown my clients it's possible, and I've got a method that I feel works, I kind of want to share it. And the funny thing is when I was going through my really rough period, I didn't realize it at the time, but the kind of formula that I'll show you guys today, it's actually kind of what I did without even realizing it. And so, you know, it's something which kind of resonates. None of it's rocket science, but it's something which really resonates for me. So yeah, that's kind of why I'm here.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
No,
I guess often you said it's not rocket science, but I find that often the simplest things, literally the simplest things, are the things that can cure us a lot of the time or prevent.
Yeah, and that's kind of an interesting concept, isn't it? Because people assume that, and I was like this, you know, I used to assume that if I've got like crazy anxiety, you know, really bad anxiety, there must be some sort of special solution. I have to go to a psychiatrist and go on 8-week courses and this and that, and you sort of begin to realize that actually it kind of comes from you, and it's little simple changes, changes which have a pretty powerful impact. And you know, a lot of it comes down to sort of self-awareness, trying to get an understanding of how your mind works, but stuff which isn't rocket science, but which can be, you know, it's kind of varying degrees of sort of being challenging for people, purely because people don't tend to be used to thinking in a certain way.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great news that it's not rocket science. Because from my own experience, I've had a similar thing where I've had such, you know, in the mind's experience, horrific realities similar to yourself, where you're just waking up just thinking, fuck, I just want to get to the end of the day to sleep again.
Yeah, exactly.
Your mind, because it feels so real, it feels so severe, it kind of logically thinks, oh, well, there must be something really wrong with me, or like, yeah, as you said, I'm going to have to see a psychiatrist, or like there's going to be some uber complicated 10-year regeneration program that might get me back on my feet. And in a way, that's just the mind playing the same tricks that got you there in the first place. And actually, there's everyone. What I realized is, which was such a nice realization to have, actually contributed a lot to my own inner peace now, is realizing on a profound level that we all have the resources within us to, let's say, bring ourselves back to life. It isn't actually the external. I mean, the coach and the doctors and everything are great facilitators and obviously can be very, very useful. But it all comes down to, I'm sure you'd agree, I'm going to hear obviously what your formula is, to the individual's resources, which is great. because we often just think, oh no, we're the victim, there's something wrong with us. We'll start labeling ourselves as having a condition, right? Being different, or actually having a mental label of our suffering, which pushes away our own resources, our own strength.
No, absolutely. And actually, what I've kind of found is that when you go and see a doctor, they're trying to help you, but a lot of the times they kind of exacerbate what you've just said. You know, they make you feel like a victim, or make you feel like you're a condition. You know, there's a sort of condition that, I mean, you might be suffering from depression, but they almost make you. They're very good at making you feel like that you have to be fixed. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And that's kind of where coaching resonated for me, because the first thing you're taught when you're being trained as a coach is that a person is not broken. All you're there to do is to help them figure out what their internal resources are, kind of what their where their internal power
help
comes
them to heal themselves.
Exactly. So no, I'm pleased.
Beautiful. Well, mate, I'm dying. I'm sure the guys are dying to know as well. This formula, then. This 5-step formula. Can you take us through that then?
Yeah,
sure. I'll ask some questions as they come, and perhaps there's some parts of the formula people can have a go at now. I'm not sure, but would you be able to take us through it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just gonna. I hope this works. I'm gonna put on a few slides if that's all right.
Go for it.
Okay. Can you see a slide of some sort?
I can. Can you guys just confirm? Yeah.
Is it all clear?
Oh, my YouTube again is. Can have a go at.
Okay, so provided everyone can see it, good stuff. I mean, the first thing to say is obviously we've only got an hour and a half, so we're going to be. It's more of a summary than drilling down into the details like I would with my clients. But what I'm hoping is by explaining this formula that people get two things from it. First of all, some practical steps that they can take away and work on. Secondly, like I said at the beginning, there's a common assumption that our mind controls us rather than we can control our mind. And the whole idea behind this formula of mine is to make it less daunting for people to get to when somebody comes to see me and they're really stressed out, they hate their job, or they're having problems in a relationship, and they come and see me and they're just like, you know what, I would love to be happy, but I just don't believe it. Can't happen. And the whole idea behind this formula is to break it down step by step and actually show, it requires energy, it requires commitment, it requires the right support, but it's doable. It's definitely doable, and I know that because I've done it. I know that because my clients have done it, and I've seen loads of other people do it as well. My coach kind of helped me through it. So that's kind of the premise behind the formula. So I'll go into the first two steps. Let me just click on the slide. Right. So the first thing I do when someone comes to me is, let's say a client comes to me and I'll give you an anonymous example. I had a teacher come to me last year, and she hated her job. She was really stressed out. It kind of made her cry loads. She basically hated it, and she came to me with a vague idea of, I don't want this anymore. I just want it to change. And the fact that she came to me was great, because it showed that there was a willingness on her part to do what was required to kind of make the changes to make her feel happier and less stressed. And it was stress which had built up over quite a long period of time because of the difficulties she was having in her job. But the first thing I do with people when they say to me, I don't want to be constantly stressed out, or I don't want to be in a crap job, or I hate it and this and that. the first thing I do is get them to state their intention. So, and this is the same when it comes to managing your mind. It's no good saying, oh, I'm sick of being stressed out, I'm just tired and this and that. You know, turn it around. Ask yourself, what is it that you do want? You know, I don't want to be stressed out. That flips around to, I want to be relaxed, I want to be happy, I want to be fulfilled. Because straight away, the focus is on something that's a lot more positive. And if you're always focusing on not wanting to be stressed, then guess what? You're going to be stressed because that's what you're focusing on. So switch it around. What is it that you do want? And once you've figured out what it is you do want, ask yourself, well, what impact is this going to have on my life? You know, how is it going to improve my life if I'm more relaxed, if I'm more fulfilled? Because that gives you something to strive towards. You know, it gives you a vision, so to speak, something to work towards to get to a point where you know that life is going to be really good. So step one, all about stating your intention. The focus, to summarize, the focus should be on achieving positive results. Don't think about what you don't want, think about what you do want. Any questions up until now?
No, that sounds great. I just know that the subconscious doesn't register negations either, does it? So when you're stating your intention, you want to make sure you're not saying, I don't want to be anxious, or I don't want to be stressed, I don't want to be nervous, even though that might appear appear positive from a logical viewpoint. From the subconscious viewpoint, it's just going to hear the words stressed, nervous.
Yeah, absolutely.
And really flip it round.
That's absolutely. And we've got a question here from Lenny. I'll just answer that. I'll answer that in a second, Lenny, if that's right. I think the key thing is, let's say I told everyone on this call, I don't want you to imagine a pink elephant in your room.
Yeah.
You know, what's going to happen? The first thing,
generally, blue monkey.
Blue monkey. The first thing that's going to happen is people are going to picture a pink elephant in their room. And you're right, the subconscious, it works like that. It will focus on stress. So get it to focus on the positive energy. So, I want to be happy, relaxed, fulfilled. It might take time, commitment, especially if this is something that's kind of been hardwired into you over time, or you've had something happen to you. Like I had a family bereavement last year, which kind of I found really difficult, and for a while, I started focusing on, I don't want to be like this. But it's, like I said, once you flip it around and start focusing on what you do want, it makes such a massive difference. And it sounds like something that's quite obvious, but not enough. I just
don't... but profound.
Yeah, exactly. So we've had a question here from Lenny. How do you break yourself out of a negative cycle? How do you want to do this? Should we answer questions at the end, or should we answer them now? Or
if you feel like it's good to answer it now, then go for it, mate. But if you feel like you want to go through your flow and then at the end, I'll leave it up to you, as you're the one leading it.
I'll tell you what, Lenny, is it okay if I come back to that question? Because I think going through this formula, it will kind of help answer your question. Okay, cool. So shall I go on to the next stage?
Go ahead, mate. Step 2.
Cool. So step 2 is all about understanding what is your journey so far. So think about where you are in life today. Now, whether you're somebody who's constantly stressed out and you're wanting to, or constantly suffering from panic attacks or anxiety, or whether you're somebody who's trying to deal with a specific situation. I've had a couple of people come to me saying, they struggle with job interviews because they get so nervous. The step here is all about understanding, well, why is it that I've gotten to this point today? How have I gotten to this point? And there's a couple of elements there. So the first one is around the chronology of events. So look back at your life, think about events that may have influenced your thinking. So, for example, if we take the job interview example, if somebody's paralyzed by nerves, they might have had some really bad job interviews, which kind of has convinced them that they're rubbish at, they're rubbish at interviews and they're not going to be able to get a job. For me personally, so one of the things that helped cause my depression was my dad almost went bankrupt, and there was kind of a belief that for me, family is like the most important thing in the world. It's a really big value for me, and there was almost a belief where we were brought up saying, you know what, you help family no matter what, and that's something which had been instilled from us in a well-intentioned way. That's something which had been instilled in us from a very young age. But when my dad almost went bankrupt, I did absolutely everything I could to help him out, and that involved taking on his debts. It involved not looking after myself. There was a lot of strain within the family. I sort of put myself in the firing line, so I wasn't really thinking about myself, and that was because of the beliefs that I had about how life should be. Never say no. It was about the fact that family is the most important thing in the world for me. So I had to spend a lot of time kind of being brutally honest with myself about, well, what are my beliefs? What are my truths in the world? What things do I hold dear to me, and how might they have contributed to where I am today? And that can be quite a tough thing to do, right? Because this is kind of how you live your life, and you're suddenly saying, actually, that could have contributed. It's not nice to think that kind of finding family important, or not saying no because you're a nice person, could contribute to you being manically depressed. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's unsettling, but it's really, really important if you want to break out of that cycle. And Lenny, this comes back to your point about how do you break out of a negative cycle. The first step is to understand what is really important to you in life, and how might that be contributing to the kind of issues or problems that you're dealing with. So when it comes to chronic stress, it's almost always some sort of conflict in values. Somebody might really want their independence, but at the same time, they want financial security, so they might end up working in a bank and thinking the money's going to get me independence, but they're being driven around like a slave. But they're not quite sure what to do there, because both of those things are really important to them. So,
So can I just chime in there?
Yeah, go for it.
So I think what you're saying, which I completely agree with, is that on some level, well, really on the whole level, we are responsible for our own states of mind, whether that be bliss or depression, despair, and it's having the awareness, the courage, the humility, the presence to look at these attachments to beliefs or thoughts or whatever, these attachments that we maybe, like you said, just programmed into us from years and years and years ago, and kind of looking at that in an objective light, going like, oh, hang on a minute, what's going on in here? Let's look at it in a more of a non-judgmental, objective light.
Absolutely.
And
I think the most
see it like that in front of you, then it can be easier to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? The most important word for me there was courage, because doing this takes courage. You're basically questioning yourself, right? Questioning what you've known over a lifetime. But if you want to break out of a negative cycle, as Lenny asks, it's so important. It has to be done. And some people find it quite easy, but some people find it difficult. That kind of depends on the person. And when I'm coaching someone, obviously we'll have to tailor it according to how easy or difficult they find it. Some people can do it within a week. Some people, it might take a few sessions. But fundamentally, I tend to do the same thing with most people that are dealing with stress, anxiety, tension, so on and so forth, in terms of this step.
And can you tell us a bit more practically then? How would someone who thinks, well, I don't know how to understand my journey, or to do a bit of psychotherapy on me, or to find out my beliefs and all that, how would you go about helping someone to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple of tools that I'll share with you guys. Actually, I'll tell you what. Let me do the next step, and then we'll come back to that. Is that all right?
Beautiful.
Because the next step also kind of fits into this, and we'll go back to a couple of the exercises. So step 3, improve your self-awareness. So this is the cornerstone for me. This is, this is definitely the most important thing. If you want to break out of a negative cycle of negative thoughts, stress, anxiety, bad consequences, feeling like you're a victim, you need to improve self-awareness in terms of understanding your thought processes and how your mind works. So let's go back to that job interview example. I used to be quite scared about job interviews, as a lot of people are. I used to go into interviews thinking, if I mess this up, my career's over. I'm not going to find another job. How's that going to make me feel? That's going to make me feel quite anxious. What happens if I'm feeling anxious? I'm not going to perform to the best of my ability, right? I'm not going to. There's not going to be any flow. I'm going to be stumbling on my words. I'm going to start sweating a lot. What's the consequence of that? I mess up and I don't get the interview. What's the consequence of that? Another reinforced belief that I can't do job interviews. So that's kind of that's obviously a sort of that's an example of how you might become more aware. And actually, we can do this exercise later on, and if somebody's willing to kind of talk about their situation, that's great. But
Valentine will.
Sorry?
I'm sure Valentine will.
So I call this exercise your path to stress and anxiety. And basically, it's about breaking down the steps mentally that lead to anxiety in response to a certain situation. And what that enables you to do is it allows you to understand at what point in that kind of process you need to change your thinking. So if you can look at that, that table that's up there?
Do you know what? On my screen,
yeah.
It's come back. Brilliant. Yeah.
Is it back? Can everyone see the slide called Your Path to Stress and Anxiety? I just want to double check.
Yes.
Good stuff. Valentine, you seem to be my IT checking man. All right, so let's take that table and let's take the job interview as an example. And this is what I run my clients through for several situations. So you've got 5 steps there. So the first one is sort of trigger or activating event. The second one is what thoughts do I have in response to that event, or kind of what beliefs do I have about how things should be done. The next one is, well, what is my feeling or emotion as a result of that thought that I have? Then, well, what is the action as a result, and what happens as a consequence? So this is drawn from sort of, I don't know, people here may be familiar with cognitive behavioral therapy, but this is basically kind of a refined version of a cognitive behavioral therapy model, but to use in a more everyday setting rather than rather than a remedial setting. So let's go back to that job interview example. So the trigger or activating event is I have a job interview in 5 minutes. I'm about to be interviewed by 3 people, very senior guys, and I'm up against 20 other people for this job. The thought or belief around that might be, I can't do interviews, I'm useless, or there's like 20 other people, there's no way I'm going to get this. Any number of thoughts like that. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Then the next question is, well, how is that going to make me feel? If I'm thinking, I've got no chance, or I'm useless at interviews, or what are they going to think of me? How is that going to make me feel? The chances are it's going to make you feel pretty stressed out, or it's going to make you panic, or it's going to make you really, really nervous. A few nerves are good, but it's going to make you really nervous and just not generally make you feel great. Moving on to the next step, what's going to happen as a result of how you feel? The chances are that you're going to put too much pressure on yourself in this interview to get it right, but by putting too much pressure on yourself, you stumble, you sweat, you don't answer the questions properly, you sort of lose your words, and it just doesn't go very well. And the consequences there are you don't get the job interview, and you've just reinforced your belief that you're no good at job interviews. So can you see how it turns into a vicious cycle?
Yeah.
So that's kind of one of the things that I do with my clients, and which they find really helpful. And Lenny, you asked about how you break yourself out of a negative cycle. And by looking at this example, that's one of the things. There's stacks of things you can do, but this is one of the examples that I would use with my clients. But generally speaking, the way you break yourself out of a negative cycle is self-awareness. Start to become aware of what's going through your mind. And like you said, Sam, it's almost like taking a step back and just objectively looking how you've been conditioned, how your thought processes work, how your emotions work, and so on and so forth. And we can come back to mindfulness as well, because that's something.
That was something I wanted to ask you on about. Yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Can I just stop you there and just say, just ask the guys who are listening now to just we'll just take 1-2 minutes break and get. I don't know if you're going to do this anyway, Osman, but
I want
to go through. Were you going to do that anyway?
I was, so we can do it then.
Sorry, I'm stealing your thunder. I'll let you lead.
But I'll keep that up there. So what, should we take like 1 or 2 minutes, and the guys on the call can have a go?
Sounds beautiful, yeah. So guys, with your pen and paper, just any kind of reoccurring stress that comes in your life, just take it through that little formula, the trigger, the thought or belief, the feeling, the action, the consequence.
Mm-hmm. I've just seen Valentine has offered to speak about it. That's great.
Beautiful. Okay, let me unmute the lovely man.
Oh, I see him laughing.
Okay, let's just get him up here, see if this works. Okay.
The pressure is on.
Hey, there he is. Oh, I can't seem to unmute him. I can put him on the big screen.
All right, you.
Oh, there we go. Oh, was he there? Yeah, there he is.
Yeah.
All right, mate. All right, Valentine. Good evening.
Can I just interrupt? Can I just interrupt for 1 second? Lenny's asked a question about how you become self-aware. Stop what you're doing, breathe deeping. Lenny, we'll come back to that if that's right, because it will be around mindfulness, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So is that okay? I'm hoping for a. I'm going to take that as a yes. So yeah, Valentine, go for it.
Um, what am I exactly talking about?
So it's essentially that table, taking yourself. If you think about a specific situation, so I use the job interview example, and taking yourself through those steps to understand, well, why is it that something stresses me out, or why is it that something kind of causes anxiety for me. So it could be around job interviews, it could be around your work or relationships, or whatever it is really. You can think of, obviously because we're on a very public call, if you want, you can think of a fairly innocuous example if you want. But take yourself through that path, and just think what happens at each stage. So what is the situation that causes me a problem? How do I think in response to that situation, or what belief do I have about how I should act? How does that make me feel? What is the negative emotion? And then what happens as a result?
Yeah, it's kind of hard for me because I don't experience anxiety at all. So
okay, good stuff. We should be. I think we should be taking tips from you.
No, I'm just trying to think because I was actually in an interview today. I just came back like 40 minutes ago. But I guess the main thing with me is that I always take it as feedback, and I don't take the rejection if I don't get the job personal, because any other person with my skills wouldn't get the job. So it's not really personal in that sense for the rejection side.
Is there any time, Valentine, where you have any kind of stress or any, like, oh, I missed the train, or just any time in the last week where you've just haven't been really, really happy, unless you're just constantly happy, and then I need to know what are you taking?
The only case that will give me stress or anything like that is if I'm lying, if I'm basically not being myself. But like today, I went to this interview and they interviewed me for an hour, 2 different people, and I just had fun. I had fun for 1 hour because I was just being myself, and I think I'll probably get the job. But if I was really lying about something, then that will really pop the stress quite a bit.
Can you give a specific example then that's happened in the last week or two where that's happened, or where you've been frustrated with someone, or just anything hasn't gone quite to plan?
Yeah. Take yourself through those steps in the table.
All right. So before, I'm unemployed at the moment, but before, like a month ago, I had a job, and I got it through a recommendation, but I didn't quite fulfill the requirements for the job. But I still got it because I lied that I did have them, and I did have the motivation to learn them, to learn the technical side of things. But obviously, when you're under pressure, you get things wrong. It's not like you've had experience, so you're just learning it on the job. Take it through the steps. Take it through the 5 steps. I guess the trigger is the fact that that I've lied and that I'm gonna screw up. Basically, there's the chance that that I could screw up, and I could basically get myself kicked out and the person who recommended me kicked out. So it was pretty much a stressful situation to put myself in. Thought and belief. I guess at that point I thought I kind of believed that I knew that I could do it, and that I wouldn't lie otherwise if I didn't think I wouldn't be able to do it. It's just that how other people saw me, because we worked in a team, and they would kind of see that I don't know what I'm doing. So it's more what other people would think, and and it is a little bit of the belief where I didn't think I'll be able to manage it, and because I lied. The thing is, even the whole time I felt like I could tell my manager and he wouldn't care that much that I did lie. because I'm already there. I've already got the job, and it's not that thing was something small, but it's just the thought that I lied about that.
How did that make you feel?
Um, I'm not sure what kind of feeling that I'll associate with it. It's a little bit stressful, I guess. Stressed, yeah, anxious, just really kind of uneasy, just impatient. Really, just kind of want to get this done and want to perfect this, so I don't have to basically have this on my mind. If I get asked to do this, then I can do it without any faults or anything like that.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, the action, I was pretty much. I don't know what action I was taking. I mean, I was taking actions to sort it out, but yeah, I guess it was time at that point. I needed to give it time, and I didn't have that time because the expectation was for me to perform and do the job. And the consequence of all this was that I did actually mess up. And yeah, I messed up. I still stayed in the job, but I did leave after about 2 weeks after that happened because just I don't know, didn't like the whole situation. I already put myself down.
Okay. Thanks for sharing. That's much appreciated. Let me just ask you a question. Putting aside the fact that you kind of talked about this example in front of about 30 people.
Yeah.
How was it kind of talking about it, sort of taking yourself through those steps?
I didn't really think of it consciously. I mean, the thing is, it's something that I needed to do. It's something that I chose to do. I chose to lie. Chose to take the job. I needed the money, and I kind of try and avoid. I try and avoid lying as much as possible. If I need it, then obviously that stress factor will be there.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So like I said, the idea behind this path to stress anxiety is it's all about, for as many situations as possible that result in negative emotions, including stress and anxiety, it's about understanding that path. Because when you understand that path, you can understand, you can almost choose to kind of, you can always start choosing your thoughts and your beliefs. And it might take a bit of time, but if my belief around a job interview is, if I don't get it, it's not the end of the world, or what difference is it going to make to me in 10 years' time, straight away you can see that there's going to be a lot less anxiety around it, and I'll probably perform better. Is there anyone else who wants to share their example? That's cool. That's cool. How do you want to do this? Shall I kind of share a personal example of mine, or do you want to go on to the next exercise, or what do you think is the best way of doing it?
Mate, I'll let you lead, mate.
Okay. I'll tell you what. Let's go back to that situation I was talking about. So about my dad's bankruptcy. So that was the kind of the activating event or trigger, as you call it. And when he was in trouble, my thought and belief was, help no matter what, never say no, and disregard how I'm doing myself. And the feeling that created for me, the next step in this path, as I call it, is, it makes you feel like there's a lot of pressure on you. It makes you feel like there's a lot of anxiety. I'm stressed. What happens if I don't come through? What happens if I can't make enough money to sort of help him out? That feeling of pressure, almost like, I was kind of being crushed. So what was the action behind that? I kind of did absolutely everything I possibly could to help him, but I completely neglected myself. I wasn't looking after my health. I almost went bankrupt myself. And it was just, yeah, I mean, everything I was doing was quite self-destructive. And the consequence of that was, you know, obviously there are a couple of other things as well, but my mental breakdown. So obviously you can
Yeah, that small little chestnut.
Yeah, that small little chestnut. But it was when I became aware of the process that my mind was going through that I started to be able to say to myself, you know what, actually, if this happens again, then I don't necessarily have to stick to that belief that you can never say no. You know, I can have that belief that I'll say yes as long as it's not self-destructive for me. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just with a client today, and it was really powerful because he was, again, he was feeling stressed and worried about going into a depression that he had before. And we managed to narrow it down to the specific thoughts. I call them thought stories. So the thought stories that were causing the feelings of depression, of anxiety, or whatever, that's causing his bad reality and nervous actions and more recluseness and all the rest of it. And when you realise, it's a very simple but profound realisation. Again, when you realise that all this anxiety is actually stemming from brain fluid.
Yeah.
It's from these thoughts, right, that we take so seriously. So the thought you had with your that was so deeply ingrained in your mind of, you know, I have to help it's like the right thing to do everything in my power to basically sacrifice myself. And because you believed that so strongly, and you're attached to it so strongly, then it kind of takes over you, right? You're like, we basically get possessed. Possessed by these thoughts that, if you actually look at them, they are just brain fluid. And I use the example with clients of, to highlight the point, you know, a thought is a thought, and that's the end of it. So the thought of, oh, I need to go to the toilet now, the thought of I want to eat some fish and chips, and the thought of my life is ruined, they are all thoughts.
Yeah.
And it's just when we choose to attach and take that reality of the thought as our own, that it can send us
absolutely
bad place.
Exactly. And the thing about those thoughts is, you're right, they are just thoughts, but it's the significance that we attach to them, and it's the fact that they're in response to certain situations. Now, the beautiful thing is, and this kind of goes back to my step 4, the beautiful thing is, you can, and this is what I think people sometimes have difficulty believing, you can choose what you believe and think. You know, your mind does not control you. So if we look back at that kind of example about my dad, or even Valentine's examples, and Valentine, I've seen your question now, I'll address that in a second, thanks. You can choose what you want to believe and what you want to think. It is 100% possible. Sometimes people aren't used to that idea. And, you know, if I'm working with a client, I'll go through with them how they can help embed that thought. You know, sometimes that's around looking at the evidence for and against, or kind of repeatedly practicing it, self-affirmations. There's quite a lot of stuff you can do, but you can choose how you think. And the next step in this formula is all about thinking about positive or more realistic beliefs and thoughts in response to a situation, to effectively deal with it in a more constructive way, so it doesn't cause such bad negative emotion. And it might take a few goes, you know, to replace a negative belief with a positive belief. Yeah, it might take a few goes. Your negative belief is kind of ingrained in your subconscious, and it might take a bit of time. But if you're persistent and you have the commitment and you have the energy to do it, it will happen, and it will make a massive change. Once you've chosen those thoughts, that's where you start to get the results. You know, once you've chosen how you want to believe, how you want to think, that's where you put it into practice. So let's go back to the job interview example. I could go out, you know, in this case, I would go out and I would get a job interview, and I would put into practice what I've learned here, you know, steps 1 to 4. So I would put into practice those new beliefs and thoughts that I want to have. And it might not happen overnight, but with a few attempts, with persistence and patience, you know, the results genuinely are incredible. You know, this is effectively the formula I use to turn my life around. And obviously, like I said, I had to have the right support, I had to have the right help, made mistakes, but effectively, this is what I used. And yeah, I mean, the results, I've seen it with my clients, the results can be amazing. It takes longer with some people than it does with others. It just depends on the specific person. But the point is, and this comes back to what we were saying in the beginning, it's not rocket science. You know, it's quite, this stuff is, in a sense, it's quite simple, yet because we're not used to thinking in this way, it can be quite tough for people to sort of start looking at things like this, in this way. But it's, you know, the message I want people to take away today is it is 100% doable. You can control your mind, and you can control your mind in a way where it helps you be happy in life. And that's kind of my key message, really. It is doable.
I think that's a beautiful message. The thing, it's exactly what I was talking today with the same client, was a fundamental shift that has to start. The fundamental thing, in my opinion, if you're going to overcome this anxiety, depression, or just bad states of mind, you have to have a fundamental shift in believing that, like you've said, that you can be the captain of your own ship. You can direct your mind with firm guidance. If that isn't there, if the belief isn't there, and they're like, I'm not in control, my mind runs the shop, or I don't know, I'm completely you know, in the victim. If you're in that state, then that will be your reality. So the first step, I don't know if you'd agree, but like, you've got to almost flip round and go, okay, this might not be an easy journey, this might not be an overnight switch, but on some level I've got control. On some level I've got control, and I'm just going to kind of take more control every single day.
Absolutely. I'm just going to take this off the camera, if that's all right.
Let us see your beautiful face.
Yeah, I feel like you guys have been deprived of my beautiful face. Sorry, shall I put it back onto the screen share? Maybe this isn't it. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And it can be quite difficult. I found it quite difficult to kind of really believe that I could control my mind. But the key thing is to, you know, every action you take, or every time you work on yourself, you kind of claw away at that bit by bit, to the point when you really start to believe it. You really can start believing it. And I think the other thing to point out is, you know, obviously we can control our minds, but I guess what I'm not trying to say is, you know, it's kind of your fault that you're in this situation, because ultimately somebody might have gone through a really, really difficult time, and so it's completely natural, and this is what happened to me, it's completely natural that you're going to have that mentality, that kind of life happens to you, my mind controls me. So as we kind of talked about earlier, it takes the courage and humility to be able to tell yourself, no, actually I can do this. I will do this. It will take persistence. It'll, you know, I have to be persistent. I have to be patient. And I'll have to be, most of all, this is one of the hardest things, I think. I have to be honest with myself. about what's going on in my mind. And once you start being honest and authentic with yourself, the shift in terms of that self-awareness and being able to change how you want to behave, it can be massive.
I like that.
So yeah, that's kind of that's sort of my that's my formula.
Thank you for sharing that.
No problem at all.
I've got definitely a couple of other questions before we answer. I guess we could go through Lenny's and Valentine's and anyone else's questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before we do that, I'd love sorry, what were you going to say?
No, sorry, go on, carry on.
I was just going to say, with the step 4 of choosing to choosing your thoughts and beliefs. So I'm aware of a multitude of ways of doing this, but what would your number one tip be? What would your number one method be to essentially reprogram yourself?
Well, the choosing your thoughts and beliefs, it's the first thing you have to do. It comes back to that self-awareness, having a really good understanding of what thoughts are going through your mind at the moment. Once you've done that, I've found that when it comes to kind of trying to change how you look at the world, change your beliefs, it's actually quite helpful to take a piece of paper, or this is what I did, and this is what I still do sometimes. Take a piece of paper, choose the belief that you want. So, for example, this is a simple example, but let's go back to the job interview one.
Okay.
The belief that you might have a belief that it's going to be the end of the world, or you're not going to find another job if you fail this. But you might want to believe, actually, is it really going to make a difference to my life in 10 years' time? And write down the evidence. What is the evidence for each belief? What do you call that? Yeah. So, how is it going to make this isn't going to make a huge difference to my life in 10 years. List out the things that, all the positive stuff that might happen to you within the next 10 years. With the original belief, in terms of trying to almost discredit it, this is going to be the end of the world. Just ask yourself, am I honestly saying that I'm not going to be able to find another single job anywhere? So it's about that. It's about almost looking at the evidence between the two. Which one sounds more feasible? Which one would sound more feasible to other people? What's worked for other people? So yeah, it's almost looking at the evidence for your thoughts and beliefs that you want to have.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. What I do a similar thing with clients is that when we identify the thoughts that are causing the attachment to the thoughts that are causing the negativity, then we just, not in a judgmental way, but just in an objective way, try and question them. So I call it investigating the thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we use certain questions, like similar to what you're saying. Let's say the thought is, if I lose my job, I am screwed. Say that's the thought. And if you're not that conscious of it, you might be just conscious of the feeling of feeling depressed. So again, through your self-awareness, you think, right, why am I feeling depressed? Oh, it's because I've lost my job. And what's the specific thought that's causing that? Oh, it's because if I lose my job, I'm screwed. Okay. And then certain questions that I take people through would be things like, it's inspired of Katie Byron. Do you know Katie Byron?
Yeah, absolutely.
So things like, is that an absolute truth? Is it an absolute truth?
Yeah, absolutely.
I am screwed if I don't get the job. Is that an absolute? No, it's not absolute. Okay. Where's the evidence for it? How do I know that's true? Shit, I don't know that's true.
Exactly.
Already it starts to lose reality. How would I feel without that thought?
Absolutely.
Shit, I'm actually a lot more chilled. So it's questioning like that, and then at the end, I ask clients to say, okay, what's some alternative ways of thinking? not even trying to be like really American and like, sorry Americans watching, trying to be like really uber positive and be like, yeah, it's all gonna be great, but just literally what's some alternatives. So I'm not screwed. I might find another job. I might find something better. Might be a funny story to tell. I don't know. The list goes on and on, but it's just the thoughts that we choose to attach with that ultimately create our reality. So it's interesting just to play with them, really, isn't it? Like, I think what you've done to come up from where you were is you've got to develop a bit of humour, haven't you, with your mind? You've got to think, oh God, here we go again, playing that broken record again, not taking it as seriously as you might have done before.
That's absolutely, yeah. I think that's. I mean, humor's. Yeah. Let's touch it. I think humor's. It's just so important. I mean, and it's almost like it's a good way of. It's a good way of almost separating the two parts of your mind. And Valentine's just asked a question around. I guess what you're saying is stop victimizing yourself, and that's absolutely right, because. Think about. I think everyone should sort of think about themselves as having a split personality. You've kind of got the part of you, let's call it the human, who wants self-fulfillment, who wants happiness, and then you've got the other part of your brain that kind of craves stability, that sabotages you, and wants to stay safe. And I don't know how many of you have read a book called The Chimp Paradox by Dr. Stephen Peters, but he actually says that neurologically the brain is wired in that way. You have one part which seeks out fulfillment and happiness, and one part of the brain which will which kind of causes all your it wants to stay safe. And so when you get the questions in your head about, well, I'm not going to get a job, what's going to happen if I do this, what's going to happen if I do that, oh, I'm such an idiot, the part of the part of you that beats yourself up, that's the other part of your mind. And it's about recognizing what part of your brain is speaking.
Yeah, and I think it's like you said, it's putting a bit of space between you and that part of your mind, and realizing that that's not you. Ultimately, you are not that voice that goes, oh, should I do this, should I do that, blah 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 blah. It's got a little bit of its own momentum at times, but that's not ultimately you. You're for me anyway. We are the part that can actually be aware of that in the first place. That can go, oh look, my mind's going off on a crazy little thing. That's you actually being able to observe it. The problem is that most of us don't create enough space to be the observer, that we're often just fooled into identifying with that chimpanzee part, or with the, not the chimpanzee, I don't know why I said that.
Well, it is the chimpanzee.
The chimpanzee part of the mind.
I think that, and that's actually quite, I think that's quite good. My first tip would be, actually, for everyone on this webinar, if you can go read Dr. Steve Peters' The Chimp Paradox, then go do it, because it's an amazing book. But if not, just think of your brain as two parts, because this is what he explains. You've got the human, that's the part of me that wants self-fulfillment. You've got the chimp paradox, you've got the chimp, which is the part of me that wants to stay safe, and that's the part of my brain that's going to sabotage me. That's the part of my brain that's going to ask all the questions and that doesn't want to do anything. And so whenever, and this comes back to your question, Valentine, whenever you're victimizing yourself, whenever you're beating yourself up, that's your chimp. That's your subconscious, your chimp. And I think you're right in that, Valentine, you're right in that. Absolutely stop victimizing yourself, because ultimately that's a different part of it's almost a different part of your mind. That's not you, that's your chimp. But also, it serves no purpose, victimizing yourself.
I'd say, sorry to interrupt, I'd say almost the victimization is actually just the chimp coming in the back door again and beating itself up.
Yeah, well, no, the chimp coming in through the back door and beating you up.
Yeah, beating us up. We believe what the chimp says.
Exactly. And And the other thing this guy explains in his book is the chimp is more powerful. So our subconscious is more powerful. The part of our brain that wants to stay safe and will always ask questions, it's always going to be more powerful. So we can't control it. Willpower is not going to work, or fighting it's not going to work. It's about managing it and understanding how your mind works. So yeah, I see we've got quite a few. We've got a few questions. How do you want to?
Yeah. Well, yeah. What I want to just say before the questions would be that regarding the whole chimp thing, I'd say that that you can train your chimp.
Exactly.
Ultimately, I agree with you in the fact that control. I know you said about how ultimately you can control your mind, but the word control can sometimes give connotations of tension and fighting and combating stuff, which I found can actually lead to more negativity and more suffering. So I think the word I use anyway, which I think kind of what you're saying, you use managing, and I'd use the word like guidance. So you that part of your mind that it goes off on one sometimes, don't identify with that. It tries to help you a lot of the time as well. It's the part of your mind that has to go, right, we need to go to A to B. How do we do this? You know, it's not necessarily just a pain in the arse. It's just that most of us haven't trained our chimps to be well behaved. So they've just had a free run for however many years and taken in the conditioning of the other monkeys.
Exactly.
So just wanted to kind of give my view on that and just don't fear the chimp. It can be managed and guided, but you're not the chimp.
Exactly.
Anyway, I'll stop it there. So thank you, really thank you, Osman, for sharing what you've done so far. Before we do wrap up, let's answer these questions. So do you just want to go through from top to bottom, and anyone else who wants to ask a question can do so now as well, and then we can just give our views, or if I don't have anything to say, I won't. But if I do, I'll chime in as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so Valentine has asked a question around what about anxiety caused by others' expectations of yourself? So let me just double check. Does that mean what about anxiety related to what other people think of you, Valentine? Or what other people expect from you? Yeah, absolutely. So I think this is. I'm glad you brought this up. This is a very, very good point. Just not to let them down. Okay, that's useful. I think everyone has expectations, and everyone. As much as you might like, as much as we like to say otherwise, we're all, by our very nature, we can be judgmental. Our chimp can kind of make assumptions about what somebody's like, and so on and so forth. The thing that really helped me was realizing that I have no control over what other people think, and by worrying about it, there's a lot of negative energy in my mind, which causes me a lot of stress. So it's almost, on the one hand, almost just letting go and saying, you know what, I can't control what people think about me. And ultimately, I don't need to control what people think about me. The other element is people's expectations of yourself will be shaped kind of by what's going on around them in society. So society has certain norms and expectations. So for example, we eat 3 meals a day, we have breakfast before 10 o'clock, or you have lunch before 2-3 o'clock. And you kind of sometimes have to ask yourself, well, where do these expectations come from? Where is this judgment coming from? If I, should I eat breakfast before 11? Says who? I mean, if you do, that's fine. Rebel! Yeah, but when people say things like you must or you should, just ask yourself the question, well, according to who? Yes, society has drilled that into us, but ultimately, society has drilled that into us, but ultimately it's for me to decide how I want to live. So I think the two answers there, Valentina, are kind of almost let go and accept that you can't control what people think of you, and there's no need, and there's no point consuming energy worrying about that. And the second point is when people say you must do something or you should do something, and you're going to let them down as a result, recognize that their expectations are kind of shaped by their view of the world, and the chances are that it's going to be very difficult, no matter what you do, to kind of fulfill their expectations. The main thing is, are you fulfilling your own expectations, and are you doing what's best for you? Was that okay? Good stuff. Next question. What is your best tip for being, this is by Ian, what is your best tip for being more honest with yourself? Wow, that's a good one. The best tip for being more honest with yourself. I'm gonna go back to my formula here and say it's about self-awareness. It's about developing the self-awareness and not being judgmental about what's going through your mind. And I'll kind of touch briefly on the mindfulness thing here. Mindfulness is all about being present in the moment. What it also helps you to do is almost step outside of your mind and see what's going on in your head, the thoughts, almost like you're kind of on the side of a road and you see all these cars driving by. You can think of those as your thoughts. And the best tip that I can give for being more honest with yourself is if you have an uncomfortable thought or an uncomfortable belief or an uncomfortable realization, it's about not resisting it and kind of feeling that sort of lack of comfort, for want of a better phrase. Because that's what you need to do to accept it. You need to accept that it's not comfortable, because otherwise all you're doing is kind of you're fighting it away and you're hiding away from it, and it's just going to come back with a vengeance. So, as an example, if I was to say, I'm not saying this is true, but if I was to realize I am a bad person, I could either accept that and accept that it's going to feel a bit horrible for a while, or I can try and resist it and it will come back later on. So I think the summary to that question, the summary to that answer is accept that it's going to feel uncomfortable. That's my best tip. So be more self-aware. Learn how to improve your self-awareness and accept that when you do, it is going to be uncomfortable. But the trick is, and this is the type of stuff I'd work on with my clients, the trick is, how do you just accept the thoughts and feelings that are going through your mind and through your body, rather than fighting them and resisting them and avoiding them? Is that okay, Ian? As a response? Cool. Is there a method to prevent attaching a negative emotion caused by stress? Chandrish, can you just I don't quite get the question there. Or Sam, am I just being a bit slow because I haven't eaten?
Is there a method to prevent attaching a negative emotion caused by stress? I could do with a reframe. Are you meaning when you're stressed, how do you not let it go out of control and get attached to a negative emotion, perhaps? Yes. Okay.
Okay. So sorry, what was just repeat that for me, Sam?
So when I think what Chandrish is saying is when you're stressed, how do you stop it from going kind of faster and faster and faster and going to this emotional whirlwind, attaching to that emotional whirlwind?
Oh, hold on, I'm just having a look at Valentine's comment. I guess rather than seeing it as a negative emotion, think of it as positive feedback you wouldn't have got otherwise. Yeah, actually, that's good, Valentine. I like that. If you're stressed, it's your mind or your body telling you something. I think the way to stop getting it out of control is, in terms of mindfulness. Sam, have you run workshops before on mindfulness?
I've done some meditation stuff, yeah.
Okay, so people that have been to those workshops,
Yeah.
To stop it getting out of control, mindfulness teaches you to be able to step almost at any point you want, just take a step back and look at what's going on inside your mind and inside your body. So if you want to prevent a negative emotion that's caused as a result of stress, a really good method is just every so often just check in, and I'll bring my kind of slides back up here just for a second, because this was actually going to be one of the exercises, but that's cool. Yeah, just 3 to 4 times a day, just sit back and just check in with yourself. And what I mean by that is just really notice what's going on in your mind and how you're feeling physically. And this is all about learning how to understand yourself better. So even if it's for a minute or two, how are you feeling physically? You feeling good? Are there any niggles? Is your chest feeling tight if you're having a panic attack? Kind of really try and understand if you're stressed or if you're having a panic attack. Just take. I know it's difficult because I've had panic attacks before. I've had loads of panic attacks before, and it's quite difficult to start noticing what's going on. But you become better at it because it's a skill that you can learn. Just notice how you're feeling physically. What part of your body feels stressed or is hurting. How are you feeling mentally? What thoughts are going through your head? And the key is, and Chandresh, I think with mindfulness teaches you to just notice that something is there. Even if it's a distressing thought or emotion, you don't fight it, you don't avoid it, you don't stick your head in the sand. You just look at it, and it's kind of like, Sam, we were talking about this before, you almost learn to look at that chimp part of yourself and just, I wouldn't say laugh at it, but you just notice it's there. And so I think that's a really, really powerful technique to kind of stop things getting out of control. There are obviously, sometimes you just need like an instant relief. So, for example, exactly, Lenny, being the observer. I think that's a great way of putting it. Be the observer. Just observe what's going on. And the more you do that, the better you become at it, and the less negative emotion that gets attached to things like, to things that are going on. I mean, another good instant relief tool for stress is kind of, I don't know if you guys would have heard of belly breathing, but this is just really simple. Take a step back, sit in a comfortable position, just exhale. Let your shoulders and your muscles get sort of floppy and relaxed, and just take in a deep breath, and take it in from your belly. Not through your chest, but from your belly, and then just keep it in for a couple of seconds, and then just let it out. And by doing that kind of deep breathing from your belly rather than your chest, it's almost impossible to not calm down a little bit. And the key is to make sure you exhale properly as well, because often people they kind of try and do breathing exercises, but then they realize that their breaths are getting smaller and smaller, and it's because they're not letting their breath out. So that's a bit of a random exercise, which definitely helps. Yeah, I'm just thinking, is there anything else?
I think that's what you're saying about mindfulness. Yeah, I mean it's an absolute life changer. I would say that the more, I mean, it changes everything. So I would say make it your #1 aim to build up your presence power every single day. See how much of the day you can stop treating as a means to an end, and actually go through just little tasks like, okay, I'm going to drink some water, and just being aware of all the sensations as you're drinking the water. It sounds so simple, right? But building up your presence power means that when you're handed a curveball in life, or when there's a stressful situation that's perceived by your mind, the more that you've built up your presence, just being mindful, being the observer, just watching and checking in with yourself. I love that, just checking in. In fact, today I was on the laptop, and I was saying to you before we started the webinar how it's a real challenge for me to stay present when I'm on the computer, and then 2 hours go by and you're like, oh. So I was doing little 10-minute timers on my phone, and every 10 minutes what we'd do is just put the computer down and take 10 belly breaths.
Absolutely.
Just be present, and then I'd start again. And what that would do is just reset my presence. It would just keep me more aware, more mindful of what's going on. There'd be a little bit of tension that would be built up that would just release a little bit. So that kind of thing will help train you up for when perhaps in life you're faced with some more challenging external events.
Yeah.
And what I want to do as well is just make a couple of comments on some of those questions as well that the guys. The Valentine, yeah. So when you said about what about anxiety caused by others' expectation of yourself, so the important thing to realize is that even though it may seem like the anxiety is caused by the external events, it's always caused from our internal thinking or attachment to our thinking about the event. Even if it just seems like, oh, but they did this, they did that, da, 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 da. Ultimately, it's internal attachment, and that's hard. I don't know, Osman, if you found that hard to kind of stomach that truth a lot of the time, to go, oh shit, actually this is my thinking that's causing the anxiety. It's nothing to do with them actually per se.
Do you know what? When my coach made that point to me, and obviously I'm glad he did and he had to, but I got so annoyed that I actually just ignored him for about 3 weeks, because I was like, no, look at all this stuff that's going on, you know, my dad's going bankrupt and this is happening and that's happening and people are wanting this, and so yeah, it is, especially when you're dealing with like constant and chronic stress, but you know, it's the truth, and the role of someone like you, Sam, or myself is to kind of help people come to that realization. And sometimes people don't need that help, but yeah, it's absolutely true. It comes from within.
It's a beautiful realization, really, because it you know, you're in control. Everyone is always in control. So I think it's actually that all our anxiety is caused by ourselves and not by other people. It means we're the ones who can remedy it. So it's just being aware, like when you're feeling anxious and it seems like the external world's causing it, it's actually because the thinking about the external event is causing it. And you can see this by the example every single day, I'm sure, where there's an external event that happens. Let's say it's raining, for example, and you've got a handful of people in the same external event, yet their internal realities are all different because of their own thinking and labeling.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Lenny, I just wanted to make a point on Lenny's question and then Shandesh's question, and then we can wrap things up. But Lenny's mentioned before, and hear your thoughts as well, Osman, on he says, how do you be self-aware, stop what you're doing, breathe, and stuff like that. So I would say, yeah, well, you've already said the belly breathing. I think that's an amazing thing to do. Just take a stop every now and again. And I would just say, yeah, Lenny, try and, like, as I'm speaking to you now, in fact, everyone who's listening right now, as you're listening to my voice, where is your attention? Where is your attention now as you're listening to my voice? Is all of your attention listening to me? Or can you actually keep a little bit of your intention inwardly? Can you keep a bit of your intention inside at the same time as listening to me? Can you feel inside some parts of your body as you're listening to me? And I found that the more you can keep grounded, the more you can just keep a little bit of your attention. Like, even as I speak, I can keep some attention. Now, it's got easier with practice, but I can keep some of my attention inside. And what that does is really ground me to my body, which removes energy from here, removes energy from thinking, because I'm focusing inside. And you'd be surprised that you can function really, really well. You can actually function better because you haven't got too much energy going in the mind, analysing and all that stuff. So I would just say, Lenny, as a daily practice, try and keep your attention inwardly as much as possible.
Absolutely, I think that's a great point. And if you want to, obviously, if you kind of have to learn to do this, right? So if you're not used to doing it, so try do it 3-4 times a day for like a minute, and just see, and just it will improve over time and see the results. It takes a bit of patience, yeah, but yeah. William P. sounds a bit like self-hypnosis. It's not far off, William. That's true. It's not far off at all. So yeah,
beautiful.
I think you said there was one other comment you wanted to make, right?
Yeah. So just with Chandresh, when you mentioned about how do you stop the storm going into an emotional turmoil when stress has come on? So an amazing I guess you call it tool or technique is to, you start feeling the storm, if you're like, and you've just maybe become aware of it when you're in the middle of the storm, and you're like, oh shit, your heart's beating, da, 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 da. The best thing to do, this is going to sound really counterintuitive, but believe me, it works wonders, and I wonder if you've done this, Osman, yourself, is to invite the storm to increase in intensity. You actually want to invite, it sounds like madness, but you want to actually invite the anxiety or the stress, whatever it is, the irritation, to increase. So you want to be conscious of it, start using your breathing, like those belly breathing, and then actually say mentally to yourself, okay, I'd like this uncomfortableness to increase. And what that does is it's absolutely magical, because it's like you see through the illusion that it is by embracing it, by fully embracing it, and go, okay, cool, yeah, go on, notch it up a bit then, yeah, all right, we like this. What that does is it shows your chimp that you're not falling for that shit, and the veil of illusion is over, because you completely embrace it. It's only when you start resisting that stress, so when you feel stressed and panicked, the worst thing you can do, I know you'll say this to me, Osman, as well, because I've experienced the panic attacks like you, and the worst thing to do is to pretend it's not happening and go, oh, it's like, it makes it so much worse, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're actually going, okay, panic, how about we increase the intensity of this panic? And it's absolutely, I found it so useful for myself and for clients. So I just wanted to share that. When I saw Chandresh's question, I thought, oh, I've got to make a note of that to share.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what it also does is, when you start to understand your panic, when you start to understand the triggers, what your example does, Sam, is it kind of helps, it helps somebody see through the illusion, right? Like you said, which means that next time, it's that little bit less worse. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Once you understand panic attacks for what they are, you start to understand how to deal with them. And the one thing I would say about panic attacks and kind of stopping things getting out of control, just remember, with a panic attack, I know, and this is the advice that I was given by a therapist, and I think it's amazing advice. Panic attack feels awful. It feels like the end of the world, but actually, they don't last very long. They're fairly harmless in themselves, and you'll get through it. Just tell you, and just remember, you're going to get through. You'll get through a panic attack. It's not going to kill you, and that's something which, and I still have panic attacks from time to time, but that's something which I remind myself. It feels horrible, but like you said, you accept it. You accept that it's a panic attack, and in 10 minutes it will be gone. So yeah, it comes back to not resisting and almost embracing that attack. Yeah.
Beautiful, mate. Beautiful. Well, just to I'll try and summarise then all the gold that you've given us, and then we'll call it quits. So you've basically told us that the main aim is to walk away knowing that you can master your mind. You can be the captain of your ship. It's an important foundation to have. You have to believe that, yeah, I can have some control. And then this 5-step formula you took us through of stating your intention, so making sure it's actually focusing from a positive baseline. We're focusing on, I want to feel more relaxed, I want to be happier, I want to be confident, rather than I don't want to be in this place anymore, which just feeds the negativity more.
Yeah.
And then you looked at understanding your past, so actually being able to take a little step back and think, right, how have I contributed to this? How have I contributed to this state I'm in? What beliefs, what values, what attachments of the mind, what conflicts may be causing this, which may take a bit of a humility pill, a bit of courage to go there, and then building on that. The most crucial thing for you then is working on self-awareness. So every single day it's something you can work on and just step back, observe your mind, take it through some questioning, like, where's this thought come from? Oh, how does that make me feel? Oh, where's the evidence in this? Kind of questioning your thoughts and just seeing them as brain fluid rather than being attached and having the chimp as your identity.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you look to actually, once you're aware of what thoughts, which are just thoughts, are causing the negativity, or the attachment to these thoughts which are causing the negativity, you can actually then go in the driving seat and go, right, I want X, Y, and Z actually to go there. Okay, this might not happen overnight, especially if these habits are really deeply ingrained, but through things like self-hypnosis, through meditation, through affirmations, through repetition, basically, I can start slowly but surely reprogramming myself in a more positive light and taking and thus having an awesome life and living happily ever after.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's basically it. And yeah, that's basically it. It's not rocket science. All it requires is commitment, and that's the most important thing, man. It's commitment, but it's so doable. And I kind of, I love what I do, and I love helping people through this kind of process and that journey of self-discovery. It's the best feeling in the world is when you have a client who comes to you with sorts of issues we've been talking about, and at the end of the 6 months, they kind of say to you, you know what, things have actually turned around. Best feeling in the world. So yeah, I just thought, thought the time is right to share.
Yeah, share the love. Awesome, mate. Well, where can people find more information about you?
So, let me just
type in the link there.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I've got my details up here. All right. Can you see the slide again?
Yeah, just put it. Oh yeah, that's all.
Or I'll tell you what, I will.
There we go. British Asian.
Yeah. British Asian CW.com. Or if you want to get in touch with me, then info@BritishAsianCW.com. So look, if anyone's got any questions or if there's anything you want to talk about, I would love to hear from you. I could talk about this all day long. I don't want to take up much more of your guys' times, but I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come along and sort of share this. I know we've kind of been on for about an hour and a half now, so, and the amazing thing is we had about 40 people sign up, and I just thought that was amazing, and it kind of made me realize this must be something that people really resonate with. So I'm really pleased.
All right, beautiful, mate.
Yeah, and as a thank you, if anyone is up for sort of booking in a free discovery session, get in touch with me. If you can do that within the next week, then we'll look for, I'll provide you with sort of a 20% discount on the coaching programs as a thank you. And just get in touch and let's have a chat about it.
Beautiful, mate. Well, thank you, Osman. Genuinely thank you for that. I've got a lot out of it myself, so it was a pleasure to chat with you, and I'm sure we'll be seeing you very soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone.
All right, take it easy, guys. Have a beautiful evening.
All right, cheers, guys.
Don't have any panic attacks.
Take care.